All right, I'm going to begin. I want to talk about so I talked about the four cardinal virtues and how they were presented in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, the last three classes, I think. Took a bit longer than I thought. I wanted to talk about the three theological virtues and how they're expressed. They are in conjunction with the four cardinal virtues, but they, I think, also attain their own expression in this work. But I wanted to start off with the biblical place in which they're to be found in 1 Corinthians 13. And this is towards the end of the chapter, famous, often read at weddings, rather bizarrely, actually. But anyway, it does speak about knowledge, about the issue that I think Tolkien is addressing here, and which, as Christian academics, or academics in general, we need to contend with, in his depiction of an era that's clearly set in the pre-Christian past, and yet is written for a modern audience, seems to be commenting on contemporary things, and at the same time eschews all Christian vocabulary. So no reference to God or prayer or churches or religion in general. And yet, I think demonstrates the virtues understood in the pagan world, but not in a way that any pagan would ever have understood or accepted them. So clearly Christianized. So in that sense, they're anachronistic. And in one small sense, he's doing what he criticized Lewis of, which is mixing things, presenting peoples of an era to possess an understanding that they themselves could never have possessed. If he were really presenting pagans of the ancient world, he would not present them as being motivated by the three theological virtues. But he does depict them that way, is my contention. So here's where it is. And the general approach of the Christian faith on these things is there are two Latin mottos here, really. Faith-seeking understanding, fides quaerens intellectum, or crudo ut intelligam, I believe in order that I might understand. And in both cases, faith or belief precedes the understanding. It's it's not the one that comes at the end. And I said, to some degree, Dante's depiction can be misunderstood or be misleading because it presents reason leading you up to the top of the mountain, and then faith, hope, and charity taking over the theological virtues. When actually, I think Dante, if you read his Divine Comedy rightly, would see that the whole action was instigated by faith, hope, and charity. And even along the way, his understanding of what Virgil is presenting him is rather more than what Virgil himself understands. But it's clear in the Divine Comedy that the instigation of the action comes from on high, comes from heaven, comes from Beatrice and the Virgin Mary and Saint Lucia. Here, it seems from outside the company, from the Valar or some force for good that the company that itself does not really see or know. And yet also, at least in the mouths of the wisest of them, like Gandalf and Aragorn and the elves, do acknowledge and seem to think that have a power to orchestrate action and events. So when things happen by chance or luck, they don't ascribe it to chance or luck. There's something more being attributed to the action than mere accident, as we would call it, from our pagan deterministic worldview of the Enlightenment, which we talk about luck now. Even Christians will talk about luck and accidents and chance and so forth. Not a very theologically astute way of representing the situation at all. And it suggests a randomness and an anarchy that we are leaving things to chance. I see people, going and buying their lottery tickets, hoping to become a millionaire, not seeing that there's a problem with this, in addition to the fact that it's a almost impossibly improbable thing that they're going to win the lottery, but just the idea that their life is up to randomness and chance. It sounds like if you read The Lord of the Rings on one level, that the characters believe that things happen by accident and chance. But if you look at it more closely, you will see that the characters don't think that and ascribe something greater to it. But this is one of the things that marks Aragorn, for instance, that he is extraordinarily lucky. If you think about it, and I mentioned the improbable instance when the ring of the One Ring falls into the cracks of Mount Doom, thereby bringing the quest to its solution, although not by the company. It seems improbable as a plot device. And yet, it's prophesied and even spoken of by Frodo to Gollum that if he betrays him, the ring will avenge itself. It's how he sees it. That doesn't mean that's the way it happens. The ring has no sentient power as such. That's Frodo's perspective on it. That doesn't mean we have to accept it, by the way. Just because a character in a narrative says something, that doesn't mean that the reader has to agree with what the character says on it, even if it's a heroic character. We're led to consider whether there's another power at work there, and Gandalf himself says that there is, and so do the elves, and again, so does Aragorn. He thinks that there are greater powers at work in the universe, specifically probably referring to the Valar and so forth. So the whole perspective, at least from the perspective of plot design, bespeaks of a providential or ordering power that transcends the narrative of probability, and in a sense invokes faith in the reader. Not that you have to be a Christian in order to read and take delight in it, but it asks you to lend credulity to the narrative. You have to use Coleridge's, or is it I'm trying to think, it's Keats or Coleridge. It's Keats. Negative capability. The capacity to be in questions and doubts and suspend your disbelief. Coleridge calls it as an act of poetic faith. We talk about it being lending a little bit of creative license to the poet or the dramatist or whatever. We have to pretend we're in that world. We just have to pretend we're there. We're not there. Given that the world is like this, will we allow the improbable to happen? All the best books have improbabilities happening. It just goes with it. Is the improbable something that we find at least possible? And I think the best stories always do have the improbable happening and us accepting that the improbable was possible and did happen. And that's what makes it delightful. That's the structure of The Lord of the Rings as well. This is a quest that can't but fail. There's no hope for it. From the world's vantage point, from the vantage point of the virtuous figures, it's a fool's errand. Ought not to be ventured, it's madness. Interestingly, the characters that regard it as a mad quest go mad. Like Denethor. Against the power that's risen in the east, there can be no victory, he says. He sees that clearly. He sees it with the seeing stone. This is a wise man. And he sees that there is something that is impossible to achieve in having the ring. But he also sees what Sauron wants him to see, of course. And based on what he sees in the world, he's correct. There is no way of defeating Sauron. From a worldly perspective, they're done. So in a sense, he is absolutely 100% correct in his judgment, that they're doomed. But that's because he doesn't trust to any power that's outside the world. He's lost faith. He's lost hope. And the sign of that is he throws himself and burns himself alive. He's given up. So it's an illustration in a negative way of the very thing that motivates the company who sees the same things and does a different thing. And what prompts the company to do that? And what I submit to you is that they have faith, hope, and love. These are the three theological virtues: faith, hope, and love. But in terms of the epistemology, there's something about faith-seeking understanding here that's being presented in the book as a way of education and understanding, and as a hermeneutic for reading the book even. Like when you read it, you're not supposed to only be entertained, to take delight in it. Everyone takes delight in it. Are you being educated in it? Well, that's the purpose of this class, is to try and seek what is Tolkien trying to convey in it, and not just what Professor Masson has to say about this. Is it actually in the narrative that we can see that he is actually trying to achieve this? But here's the passage. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. Now that's an analogy. Immature to mature. And that's a worldly analogy even. But he's talking about the matters of faith here. So it's not the same thing. Because not everybody will come to the perspective that Paul is commending here as the better path. But this is the faithful way of understanding the world. For now we see in a mirror dimly. It's reflecting on his own analogy. But then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. I'm already known. So now faith, hope, and love abide, but the greatest of these is love. Well, that's because I'm known by love. God, who is love, he knows me. I am known by him. And I know him in return. Well, how do I do it? In a sense, I see it through a glass darkly. I don't see it fully. And yet, in the narrative of the Lord of the Rings, there's something of a clarity of vision that motivates those who are in the fellowship. And the clarity is seen in possessing these three, what we will call theological virtues of faith, hope, and love. Any comments or questions there? I'm gonna try and illustrate this today. Yes.
And I found it extremely interesting because I had a conversation with one of my colleagues at work, and I was trying to help conceptualize the idea of salvation, and the idea that I kind of came to is that it can be conceptualized as salvation is true maturity, in the sense that Christ, when he tells us to pick up our cross and follow him, it's a denying of our selfish desires, of a sinful nature, and of these things. And so, I think in that way, when you're a child, we've talked about it in this class, children are brought up, or you teach them according to their appetites.
Yes.
As opposed to
acting as if they don't have them, or telling them that they don't matter.
Right. And so in that way, it's kind of like you're laying aside appetites, for a higher truth, for true reason, which is found in the gospel of Christ. So I think it's a very good way to conceptualize.
Yeah, so one way you can do it is by talking about, and this is what Lewis does, C.S. Lewis does in Mere Christianity, he tries to demonstrate that people do believe in justice. And he talks about the playground and the fact that children immediately say to one another, that's not fair. They say it all the time. And when they say that, they're not just using words as weapons, they actually are appealing to a notion of justice that they know that the other child understands. They know what it is, and that's why they're angry. You've violated it towards me, and the reason I'm saying it to you is I'm telling you, who also I know also know that there's such a thing as justice, that you have violated it. Now we see it with crystal clarity when somebody else does it against us, and here's one of the consequences of sin: when we do it ourselves, commit the injustice, we don't see it at all. Oh, well, it's a speck. Yeah, okay. But I didn't mean to do it, whatever. Yeah, I did that. But when somebody else does it, we not only see that they've done it, but ascribe a terrible motive as well, which sometimes isn't the case. It can sometimes be incidental. Yes, I tripped you, but actually, I actually didn't mean to. But when I stuck my foot out and threw you down, well, yeah. But there was a reason for that, and I can keep pushing it back. Anyway, the point is that they appeal to something which they can't see. Has anyone ever seen justice as an empirical object? No, it's a concept, it's an idea. And yet they are convinced of the reality of it. Well, that's the opening gambit for mere Christianity. And then he's talking there about one of the 4 cardinal virtues. We can see it right there. And yet justice on its own is not sufficient to relieve us of the problem of injustice, because we find that we are unjust. And when we find that we're unjust, who is going to rectify the injustice since we are unjust? There has to be somebody who is just that will do it, who also is going to atone for our injustice, etc. Anyway, I don't need to get into all that. But it's the analogy that he uses here of being like a child and thinking like a child is maybe apropos for Lewis's introduction there. This is exactly what we recognize there. There's something wrong in the world. But he doesn't, the solution is a very mature one on Tolkien's part. He does not present it in terms of a narrative that a pagan would have presented. He reaches outside of it. We don't get a council of the gods, for instance, like we would in any of the pagan epics, at least of the Greco-Roman variety. There's no, Athena meeting with Zeus and complaining about Poseidon. Same thing in the Romans. The gods are fighting amongst themselves, and effectively it's a chaotic universe, fated, and they have to determine what's going to happen, but it's already fated and it's done. They can't avert their fate. This is not a fatalistic universe that Tolkien presents here. There's no accident or chance. Even though the characters talk about that, that's not what they believe. They say it, but they act better than what they say they are analyzing. So they don't believe that Aragorn is lucky. They believe that he's chosen. They believe it's his time. Why? Because they keep mentioning his titles. And a whole list of them. What does that mean? This guy has come, and it's his hour. He's been waiting, he's been biding his own time, but so has the whole of Middle-earth been waiting for Aragorn to come along. This is the heir of Elendil. Now that's what they say of when they want to disparage him. That's the guy who fell and failed. And he himself acknowledges that's part of his inheritance. But he's more than that. And there'll be a whole list of titles that he has inherited, which show to them that all of these things have happened for a purpose, and the purpose is happening right now. And if that's the case, then there is a higher purpose outside of the individuals there that is now coming to fruition. Something like Providence. Certainly prophecy fulfilled. That is plain. And that sense, whether you're a Christian or even just a non-Christian reader, is unmistakable. That's part of what gives it its potency, the narrative, I think. There is a sense of everything happening according with a plan. And yet the plan, although it's prophesied, doesn't seem clearly presented to the characters such that they know what to do when they're acting. They have to make choices, and a lot hangs on their choices. A lot. They seem to think so, and the reader is left with left in no uncertain terms, but to think that if they make the wrong choice, then everything will fall. Everything will fail. They keep talking about the quest edge is on a knife. If we should fall, Galadriel says this, if you should fail, it's over. There is no hope. And yet there is still hope, she says, right? While the quest remains, right? But these are the figures of wisdom appealing to something that they themselves can't fully articulate or understand, and yet no is there that can rescue the situation. It's there throughout. It's the golden thread throughout the whole narrative that drives the plot. And again, it's not something that's dependent on the virtue of the company. That's plain. They even say that to Frodo. Yes, it's not because you're so great or wise or whatever, but it has come to you, the ring. And so there is an idea of redemption in life, or a vision of the redeemed life, that is presented in the Lord of the Rings. And I think that it is, if it is not acknowledged, the whole plot falls apart and doesn't work at all. Or you're left with an appeal to a type of explanation that your worldview won't admit. I.e. that they're in a pagan world in which all they can appeal to is the forces of nature. So we've already seen in the study of the virtues that we looked at that justice, as it's portrayed, requires love and mercy to be perfected as justice. Remember that it's the pity of Bilbo that allowed the ring not to harm him fatally, and allowed Frodo then to have him. So it's the way in which he received the ring, and the mercy that he showed, which was not something that the creature Gollum deserved. In fact, he deserved to die. He didn't give him what he deserved. And Gandalf has clearly been thinking about it a great deal, and it, in one sense, agrees with Bilbo that he deserved death, but also says, but there's something that stayed his hand. Note the passive voice. Something stayed his hand, and he didn't do it. And that thing that restrained him from doing it has allowed the ring now to come into your possession. And so make sure that you, first of all, don't use it at all, but also consider the importance of mercy and pity. Because it may yet be the case that your enemy might do what you yourself can't do. So justice requires love and mercy. Courage requires faith and hope. Remember, we saw in the character of Eowyn, she wasn't courageous. She was vainglorious and despairing. She had no hope. And she acquired hope by meeting up with Faramir in the Houses of Healing. She became a different woman. She no longer wanted to die. She didn't want to throw her life away. That wasn't courageous to want to throw your life away. Act of desperation. But the unique qualities, the theological qualities, I don't think we've looked at yet, and we really need to. So faith, we'll look at it first, is the basis of friendship, and the fellowship of the ring is rooted in friendship. Friendship, as C.S. Lewis describes in Mere Christianity, not Mere Christianity, The Four Loves, is marked by its unity of purpose. So he describes it differently than erotic love. Erotic love, you look at the lover. The lover is the one you love. Friendship love, you look shoulder to shoulder at something that you all want to do. It's a common purpose, or a common joy, or a common love, like a sport, an activity. Think of the games you play. These are your friends, things that you like to do together. There's a commonality there. And unlike erotic love, where if you add the numbers to that, you subtract from the experience. So erotic love, to be fulfilled, requires exclusivity, says Lewis. Friendship love is not marked by this at all. You can add as many people to the game as you want, and as long as they all want to play by the rules of the game and take delight in the game, nobody's the worse for it. Sure, you can join in. You like doing this? Go ahead. And if you take joy in it, these will be your friends. And the fellowship of the ring here is marked by that. So they have faith in a sort of a trust of one another that forms their friendship. And note the trust that comes out of it. The trust component is very vital. Part of faith. Used to be a demonstration in evangelical rallies. You get somebody falling backwards. Do you trust me? and you get somebody there to catch. Have you ever seen that? I don't know if they, right? So somebody stands there and falls back, and literally falls backwards. They're going to crack the back of their head. But what led you to, and I presume that they weren't set up. It was a stranger that they did it. But do you trust me to catch you? Yes. Well, we're going to see. I mean, most people, that's a pretty hard thing to do. What led you to do this? Because playgrounds, how many kids have you seen will do this, and then they pull their hands away and they go clonk? I mean, that's Charlie Brown and Lucy with the football. Never mind. Peanuts illustration. Now I'm going to hold it. There you are. You're sure? You're sure? And then he kicks it, and she always pulls it away, and he always lands on his back, right? And you think, what a blockhead. And everyone laughs at Charlie Brown. But he had trust in her, and there's something funny about that. But that's what is being illustrated here, that they do have trust one another, and even when there's nothing to hold them to it, and this is actually important, it's a voluntary association. That's what marks the friendship. Friendships are never coerced. You can't force somebody to be your friend. You have to explain this to kids sometime. They're not going to like you if you give them your chocolate anymore. You can't make them be your friends. Something different's happening there. If they say, I'll be your friend if you give me your chocolate, the conditional made it impossible for you to be friends. Because there's no condition on friendship. It's a voluntary association. It's a fellowship. So faith is the trust that forms friendship. Hope is the thing that allows a vision of the future in which good will prevail over evil. Have hope. And there's a priority or a sequence here, by the way. So the fellowship, the friendship, the free association that builds the trust also fosters a hope within them that what they do collectively with a unanimity of purpose will achieve a certain outcome, and they have hope in that. And the hope comes from the solidarity of the friendship. So let's be true to one another. And in fact, that's actually what is said, and that's really interesting. At the Council of Elrond, when they're called upon to commit themselves to this, they come freely, and it's not an oath that is laid upon them, and they can lay it down at any point. Elrond's very clear about this. And yet, while they remain true to one another, they have hope. And this is one of the things that brings Frodo to fail, by the way, is that he loses trust in the fellowship. He sees the threat of the ring and the way it's breaking up the company, and so he loses trust in them. He goes to the other side of the river Anduin, right? And decides he's going to go on by himself. What saves him, or saves the quest, is Samwise, who goes after him, even though he says, I'm leaving you behind, I'm not going with me, you can't swim, Sam. And he says, the stupid thing, I know, but I'm going with you. Anyway. I'm going alone, I know, and I'm coming with you. Okay. Faithfulness there, and friendship. He's willing to drown. His friend Frodo is not willing to let him drown. Picks him out of the water, and they go on together. In the end, he carries his friend at the end. So it's that friendship that held them there. It wasn't just the love of the servant for the master. There's a bit of that there, but there's more than that. They're friends there, and it seems to be a stronger bond. And finally, out of that hope, a love which is marked in the idea of a divine reality. That love is what marks the divine reality, and therefore it is a human possibility. That's what brings Faramir and Éowyn together in the end. Remember, she's despairing when she goes into battle. Faramir is a little bit better off, but he also has something of the dark shadow over his life. He does let Frodo and Sam go, but he is marked by a sense of despair for the future, because the city of Gondor is going to fall. He thinks it. And yet he falls in love with Éowyn in the Houses of Healing, because they believe that the providential ordering principle that's guided the whole quest to this point is the nature of ultimate reality. You don't call it God. And so they are, and the effect of this in the characters is the characters become bigger and better than they were before, sometimes literally bigger. The drafts of the Ents, right, that literally make Pippin bigger, is a sign that of a sort of maturity. But that is less significant, the physical growth, than is the moral and spiritual growth that you can see in all the characters. So Samwise really genuinely becomes wise. Becomes a sort of, he leaves as a servant, he comes back and he becomes the master. He inherits the book from Frodo. He's going to write as if he were the master of that house, and he will become one, because Frodo leaves his estate to him and his wife. Likewise, Frodo is transformed. All of the characters are improved in a way beyond themselves. And that's because they have partaken of an adventure that was fulfilled by powers that were greater than they. So I think, and I've said this throughout, there are analogues in the narrative, and when I say analogues, analogies, prophet, priest, king, servant, and master, that point to Christ repeatedly. I think that there's that. We can see that those analogies aren't just analogies, they drive the whole plot. If you could leave it alone and say there are analogies there, oh yeah, I can see something of that. Frodo going up Mount Doom, it's like going up the Via Dolorosa, he's bearing the cross, it's bearing him down, he falls down, somebody has to help him carry the cross the rest of the way, for a time he does, etc. And then of course there is a sort of a failure there at the end. At least there's an analogy. I can see that makes perfect sense. But how much does it order the whole plot structure? That's the question. And analogies on their own don't do that. But the motivating principle, what leads the action to happen when it does and how it's acknowledged by the characters that act as they do, that is bigger than mere analogies. That's what I'm trying to say. There's more here than simple analogies. Because the analogies are a little bit like Aslan. Oh, he's a lion and he gets slain on the stone table, and the table cracks, and and then he comes back to life and his mane grows back. Oh, that sounds like Jesus. Yes, of course. That's an analogy. How does it drive the structure of the whole plot from beginning to end? It's more there in Tolkien than it is in Lewis, in my mind. So it's more theological, not less, even though he mentions nothing about it and is less overt in his structuring. And I think that other people have intuited this very well, although some deny it. I don't know how they can deny it, but so think of the beginning of the story when the hobbits set out and commit themselves to acts of faith. Deal with faith first of all. They entrust themselves to a sort of goodness that they themselves don't know, that's outside the Shire, on a path that nobody within the Shire would say is anything but folly. We don't leave the Shire. In fact, few of the hobbits ever even go to the Prancing Pony, into the Prancing Pony. That's outside the Shire. That's not many people actually get there. Sam has never left the Shire. And the others regard, why would you want to leave this place? Ever. And so it's not a hobbit motivation. There's something more than that. And I think that they are echoes, at least in a very minimal way, of Christian faith. There's a sense of, Gandalf has told them they have to do this. But why do they believe Gandalf? Why did Bilbo come and get Gandalf? Gandalf come and get Bilbo, rather. Back at the beginning. Like, what? How did this all happen? In the case of Gandalf, he becomes the main means by which they exercise their faith. They have to have faith in Gandalf, that Gandalf is leading them and wants what is good for them, which he repeatedly says. It's not just, I'm going to use you because I need you to do a very bad thing. It's that I mean well for you. He says that repeatedly. So think about the passage when Bilbo has the ring and decides, this is right at the beginning of the narrative, where Bilbo has the ring and he's decided to give up the ring. And then throws a big party and then vanishes, and he thinks it's hilarious. And Gandalf sets off some fireworks so that he's sort of trying to get rid of the memory of the disappearing thing, because that's going to draw attention. That doesn't just happen willy-nilly. It's probably we want to get rid of the idea of a ring. This is look over there. There's a sound, a really loud bang, right? Not pay attention. They disappeared. When he says that he's going to do this, and he decides he's going to do that, the ring is still in his pocket, which is again interesting. What's going on? Does he intentionally leave it in his pocket? Does he forget that it's in his pocket? Is it somewhere in between? Is it a bit of both? I think he forgets it's in his pocket, myself. I don't think he intentionally. It's like, yeah, I'm going to leave it behind this, and then he sticks it in his pocket, hoping to walk out so Gandalf doesn't see what's happening. Is that it? I don't know. That's not how I read it. I don't think he is entirely aware of what he's doing. And Gandalf says to him, Frodo or Bilbo, it's in your pocket. And so then comes the battle of wills between them, and he gets angry at him. And Gandalf says, I'm not trying to rob you, but to help you, I wish you would trust me as you used. And then you get the addict's confession from Bilbo. He says, I part of me wants to keep the ring, part of me wants to give it up. I don't know what to do. I'm torn. And that, I think that is a very realistic portrait of the effect of that sort of addiction. Addicts don't like their addiction. They want to give it up, but they can't. They don't have the power to stop it. And Gandalf says, if you can't trust or make up your own mind, then trust my mind. Trust me. He says, if you can't make up your mind, trust me. Trust mine. It is quite made up. Go away and leave it behind. Stop possessing it. Give it to Frodo, and I will look after him. So command, do this, trust me, and he does do it. He later says that he could have taken the ring from Bilbo, but if he had done so, it would have broken his mind. So he voluntarily gives it up, even though his will is not free enough to do it on its own, but he does it out of faith in Gandalf. That's just enough. He doesn't have faith in the ultimate providential ordering and the good of it, but he knows Gandalf is his friend and cares for him. And when Gandalf commands him to do it, he trusts him enough and the certitude that he says in giving the command that he actually does do it and freely does it. When I say freely, is he not conflicted? Yes. But he does it. And he wasn't coerced. He wasn't forced to do it. So that really important, all the language in the interaction of characters is very deftly done by Tolkien, I think. And realistic at that, in that sort of situation. And when he tells him to do it, it seems like it almost breaks a spell. Allows him to do something he couldn't do before. And what his trust in Gandalf does, which is a kind of faith, is it frees him. So the faith that he has produces a sort of freedom he lacked before. Before he was basically committed to the ring, and to the point where he was now calling it as precious. He was married to it. He was bound to it. And he did not want to break that bond. Nothing could break that bond. But the good of the friendship and the trust was able to overcome the darkness of the sin, of the evil of the ring that was possessing him, or rather, that was depriving him of all the good. And we could see that when he described himself being stretched. His life had been extended, but he was losing himself in the process. He was being given over to the power of the ring. Same thing when Sam and Frodo meet Aragorn. I won't go into that, but same sort of illustration. There's a little line that all is glitter, all that glitters, all that is gold does not glitter, not all those who wander are lost, etc. It's a reference to Aragorn. It's in the letter that Butterbur forgets to give to them when they come to the Inn of the Prancing Pony, and it was written by Gandalf, and it's a reference to him. So yes, he looks foul, but he feels fair. There's something good in him, and he asks them to trust him. He doesn't even reveal who he is. So it's actually a further instance, or a more implausible act of trust than the first one. The first one was Gandalf. Everyone knows that Gandalf is the Hobbit's friend. It's who's Bilbo's friend and who's Frodo's friend. This guy, they only know because of a character reference from Gandalf. They've never clapped eyes on him. They have no idea who he is. And he asks them to trust him. It's a very strange thing to do. You're giving me no reason to trust you whatsoever. And it seems to matter to Aragorn that they do it on the basis of pure trust. I'm not going to give you reasons for it. I'm not going to reveal. He doesn't reveal who he is. And that seems to be I don't even want to see it as a condition. Our fellowship, our friendship together is one of absolute trust. That's what guides my type of friendship, is what Aragorn is saying. Because he doesn't know who they are either, really. Certainly he doesn't know who they are personally. He's never met them. Yet he is going to commit himself to them and lay down his life for them if necessary. So he's wiser than they are. He's more committed. He's more marked by a life of trustworthiness and trust and faith. In fact, he is the man of faith, the king. So that is an interesting passage. I think the meeting with Strider at that point. There is and in those situations we see the power of I would say a divine power at work. It does things that could not have been done by the fellowship on its own. It says it breaks the power of the addiction to the ring. It leads them to trust a total stranger to take them on a quest in strange places. And it becomes a sort of a complementary, faith becomes the means by which the divine forces work through the characters of virtue. It's because they have faith that they get access to a power outside of themselves. So this is how the theological virtues marry themselves with the cardinal virtues. And then they have access to a sort of a courage they didn't have before, a sense of justice they didn't have before, etc., etc. So it becomes a superpower. Here's a good illustration of that power. When he first encounters the ring wraiths, he feels a terrible urge to put the ring on. And in fact, he hears, put on the ring, right? And he finds himself incapable of resisting the command. It's a command, put on the ring. And it's a sort of demonic assault on his will, which he knows he should not. Gandalf has said, do not at all, whatever you do, do not put on the ring. They're saying, put on the ring. And he can't stop himself. Where is this on what's the name of that? Weathertop. And he sticks him with the Morgul blade in the shoulder, because at first he puts it on, and then he tries to take it off, but one thing he doesn't do, he won't give it over, and so he gets stabbed with this, so from without. But he finds that there's something that intervenes at precisely that moment, and it's a few things. One of them is that Strider arrives right at that moment, just by accident. Where's he been? Who knows? Right then, when he gets stabbed and is going to have the ring taken from him forcibly, Strider arrives. Again, improbable plot device. But there he is. He arrives and he has a flaming brand, and the light seems to scare the shadowy wraiths. Why? Who knows? Light, darkness, representation of something greater than they as a power. And it also, and even more importantly, succeeds because here it says that there's something, that a power that is there at his petition. And what is it? He invokes Elbereth. Not even consciously, almost as a prayer. At that moment, as the Witch King was ready to strike the death blow, Frodo threw himself forward on the ground, and he heard himself crying aloud, "O Elbereth Gilthoniel." He doesn't decide to pray, he finds himself praying. And that name, that power, is greater than Aragorn's. It saves him. A power intervenes at that point, the invocation of the mercies of the Valar come to his aid. But he's brought to that. He doesn't bring himself to it. It's like in the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Tries to pray, can't pray, his heart's as dry as dust, and then suddenly he finds himself able to pray. Comes to him from outside, divine aid. And as he recovers, Strider remarks it was not Frodo's swordsmanship or those of his friends that mattered. More deadly to him was the name of Elbereth. That's what Aragorn said. It was the name there, because now a power has been awoken that is beyond that. Likewise, Galadriel does the same thing with her gifts. They're being given divine aid. That's what they're getting there. These are implements, but there's something that the implements have in them which transcends the material physical world. The lembas bread has a virtue in it far greater than the substance. You know, they're popping them back like like an M&Ms. You know, oh, one of those will sustain you for a day. How many do you have? And I can't remember what he says, 5 or something like that, or you know, typical Hobbit gluttony. But there is something that is more there. Now, some have seen this as a sign, like a Eucharist symbol. I think that's entirely probable. But they're also given elven cloaks. They're given the phial of life-giving water. The phial, by the way, and this is interesting, compare and contrast the ring and the phial. The phial of Galadriel is made of glass, and it's held in an open hand. You have to hold it. You can let it down. The ring goes around your finger. It sort of holds you. You hold it, it holds you. It's on your finger. And it seems to be able to fall off your finger for that matter as well. Remember at the end of the Prancing Pony, when he falls, and he even shows this in the movie, he falls and he sticks his hand up, and improbably the ring falls on his finger. Like, you try and do that. It's not possible. But there it does happen. So Galadriel gives them these aids on the quest that will help them achieve it in ways that they couldn't. And among other things, the rope that obeys their commands. Like, what sort of rope obeys commands? Give it a tug and down it comes. It's unbreakable. These are implements that are not, they're magical implements, really, effectively. They have spiritual power. And when he pulls the rope loose, Sam thinks that it's an accident. Oh, I didn't tie it very well. And he said, no, I tied that rope as there's no way that rope's coming untied. That's not an accident. Again, those sorts of plot devices happen so repeatedly in the narrative that Tolkien is clearly demonstrating more than human actors and human agency in the development of the plot. As I say, it produces a friendship in them, which is the thing that sustains them to the end. So here's a quotation. When Merry and Pippin commit themselves to Frodo, they say that to him, you can trust us to stick with you through thick and thin, to the bitter end, and you can trust us to keep any secret of yours closer than you keep it yourself. But you cannot trust us to let you face trouble alone and go off without a word. We are your friends, Frodo. So very moving statement, which he then demonstrates in the rest of the narrative of the action. It's a supernatural friendship. Here's another instance. No, I'm not going to read that. But note the juxtaposition. Yeah, actually, this is a good point. The Fellowship and the Nine Riders. What unites the Nine Riders, the Ring Wraiths? It's not friendship. There is a solidarity of purpose, but it's Sauron's purpose. They are driven. They are his slaves. They are afraid of him. They have not willingly given themselves to obey Sauron. They feel like they have to. They're terrified of him. In fact, all of Sauron's forces are marked by coercion. They are his slaves. And that's the condition of that's the condition of survival. You will be allowed to live and serve the master. That's your reward. There is no other reward for you, but you will be a slave. Whereas on the company of those that oppose them, also 9, exact opposite. There is no coercion, there's no compulsion. It's a free alliance, and you may abandon the alliance as you see fit. Although we're shown the consequence of breaking your oath in those oath breakers that are under Dunharrow. Right? And even there, Aragorn, the heir of Elendil, is faithful to those who are unfaithful to his great predecessor by going down and allowing them to fulfill the oath that they once broke. In other words, he's given them a second chance. This is friendship. This is faithfulness to those who betrayed you. Again, it's the sign of that he is a sort of a king that no earthly king ever is. No earthly king rewards treachery in this way. Again, it points to not only to Christ, who forgives his enemies, but to a power that is outside the human considerations normally. Yes?
Is there something to be said there? This could be a bit of a reach, but to somebody who offers redemption to those who are the soul?
Yeah, no, I think he is, sure.
Yeah.
He's offering them redemption. Yeah, they're in prison. They're tormented. And there's no release for them. He goes down and yes, there's a sort of redemption. And he releases them. That's what he says at the end, and others are upset that he lets them go as well. Should have kept those guys around, go to Mount Doom with them. and they would have been a pretty powerful foe. True. But then I wouldn't have done what I intended to do with them, is to free them from their treachery and restore them. I would have used them for my own purposes, and he's not willing to do that. Again, an extraordinary act. It's like the ring. That whole realm of the traitors is like a big ring of power. Like, can they not ride to Mount Doom and defeat all these other characters? I don't know, maybe. They seem to have terrific power. He won't even consider it. Yes?
There seems to be a recurring theme in Lord of the Rings of a sort of victory over death, and one can put that in terms of Christ's victory over death, for the example of Aragorn, as well as for the example of Gandalf in his return from the fight with the Balrog. But when it comes to Frodo and his ultimate defeat of corruption in the Mount Doom, there's a difference, because for Aragorn and Gandalf it's like an intentional victory, but for Frodo it's an unintentional happenstance sort of victory. And my question would, I guess, be, why do you think that Tolkien chose to do that with Frodo and not with the other two characters?
Well, that's a great question. And why does Aragorn stay behind? Why does Gandalf go? Why the elves go? And why does Frodo go with the elves and with Gandalf into the Undying Lands? And why the others remain? Why Aragorn remains is now it's the Age of Men. That's why. So their answer, that one's sort of easy. That's the differentiation there. It's now his time. It's the Age of Men, so Aragorn will stay on Earth, and the others will go. But why does Frodo receive different? Well, he's been given immortal life, effectively. He's going to the Undying Lands where he won't die, even though he's fatally wounded. He's been given a grace and mercy that he doesn't deserve out of favor from the Valar. He seems to have... he says it in the film. It's not quite so much there in the book, but there's a wistful sadness about his, I'm going to have to go and you're going to have to do it without me, which I'm not sure that is faithful to the book necessarily. Frodo's going to a place where he's not going to die. And he's going to be with Gandalf, and he's going to be with the elves. And this is the place you want to be. And he is given that life, again, even in the sense that he's undying there, even though he is mortal as a hobbit and has been wounded and can't be healed because the wounds he suffered are too deep. There's a sense, again, a future eschatological fulfillment in the Christian story that Frodo possesses that the others don't, because he bore the sin, and he did die of a sort because he was wholly given over to it. Like, he doesn't say it's finished, but he says the ring is mine. I will not do what I came here to do. And then, so he's wholly given over to evil, and the black figure against the bright backdrop of Mount Doom, he's totally black. There's nothing good left in him. And then the redemption is that he gets his finger bitten off. And then he's restored, ironically, by just losing a finger. What is it? Frodo the Nine-Fingered or something like that. He'd be a legendary character, yeah. But he's not whole. The wholeness will come in the Undying Lands, and yeah, he's manifesting something different than the other characters, than just victory. It's victory through suffering and victory through defeat, because the others were not defeated the way he was, because he was the ring bearer. He failed, so he represents I think the failure, well, if you want to see it, the failure of human religion to achieve God's ends. Even an ordained like the temple, like the Israelite temple, which is there for a specific purpose, which it actually has an analogy to Christ, but it can't actually do what he does. He does the same thing. He's like the Levitical priesthood, who can't finish what the law demands be done. So I don't know if that helps at all, but that's my sense. It's a good question. Yeah, you're welcome. I'm not going to get to love, I don't think. Let me do hope at least. I'll get into love next time. Hope. I mentioned at the outset that Tolkien is very much motivated by the vision of Beowulf, the Beowulf poet. And the days of the Beowulf poet, although he was a Christian, and certainly the portrait of Beowulf, it's a pagan epic. And there is a sense of hopelessness because the forces of chaos and monstrosity, even when you defeat the monsters, is still there. There's no sense of redemption there, per se. At the end of Beowulf, I think you're left with a pretty bleak future. The kingdom is about to be invaded by all of its enemies, even though the dragon's gone. The dragon's dead. Beowulf, the great hero, has slain the dragon. What a great figure. But the kingdom he defended, the Heorot, is now about to fall. So any victory they have is going to lead to an ultimate defeat anyway. So it's futility. There's a fatalism about it. There is a sort of hopelessness in the Lord of the Rings. It's expressed. Even Gandalf says it. You know, ultimately evil will win. He even says that. Not those words. And Aragorn, likewise, when Gandalf falls with the Balrog, says we must do without hope. And Gandalf was their hope. He's the flag bearer. He's going on before them all. We must do without hope, he says. At least we may yet be avenged. Let us gird ourselves and weep no more. Come, we have a long road and much to do. And then he later on then goes down the paths of the dead, which is which Eowyn says, why would you go that way? That's the way of despair. I had hope in you. That's one of the reasons she wants to go with him. One of the reasons. The other reason, which we know is the real reason, is she wants to die. But you're going to go on your own, then you're throwing your life away. Why would you do that? That's what I want to do. You stand for something better than that. Don't do that. She's broken at his choice, actually, because of the motivation for it. She sees only death in it. When he goes down there and goes to rouse these disembodied spirits, little hope that he might succeed on any part, even his company, Gimli and Legolas, they're terrified. They're all terrified. And they don't have much hope that they will be able to succeed. Nonetheless, they still commit themselves to him, just like Frodo, or rather Bilbo did when he gave up the ring to Gandalf, and Frodo did when he did what Gandalf commanded, and Frodo did when he followed Aragorn. Again, that sort of hope. In the same way, they follow him despite their own mortal fear of the undead. And when Frodo also goes down into the vicinities of Mount Doom, he's overcome by hopelessness, despair. And he says this to Sam. He says, it's all quite useless. You are the fool. This is Sam actually speaking. To himself. It's all quite useless. You are the fool, Sam, going on hoping and toiling. You could have lain down and gone to sleep together with Frodo days ago if you hadn't been so dogged. But you'll die just the same, or worse. You might just as well lie down now and give it up. You'll never get to the top anyway. But he doesn't do that. That's what he expresses. So he expresses despair. Does he despair? If he does, then he lies down and dies. That's what he wants to do. What Tolkien presents us here as complex characters, multiple motivations. They say this, they do that. At the end of the day, what you do shows what you believe. Not what you say. What you say should be what you do, but at the end of the day, we don't act in accordance with it. What you do is really what matters in the end. Don't bother doing that. I'm not going to show up. You know, if you do that, I'm not. You can't count on me. I'm not going to be there. Don't expect me to be there with you when you do that sort of thing, and then you're there. Like parents do this with their kids. You know, I'm not going to. You're on your own. You make that choice, and there they are. But he doesn't give in to despair, and he carries Frodo all the way up the mountain, and they effectively show a hope that they don't have. They express hopelessness, they act hopefully. That's the key point. And that's characterizing the company throughout. They have a pagan expression of hopelessness. All of them, including Gandalf. That's not how they act. It's how they act that matters. In their expression, they're the same as Denethor. In their action, they're the opposite. And the greatest form of the hope is brought by the figures of the prophet and the priest, or the prophet and the king. Prophet being Gandalf and the king being Aragorn. He gives the most hope. It's a sign sent from above or from the past that something has happened to galvanize a fellowship to do what once happened, which is to defeat Sauron. It's happened before once, and now it's going to happen again. And when they reforge the sword, it shows that he knows that the time is now. So he does it out of hope and expectation that goes with that. He thinks he is going to destroy Sauron when he reforges the sword. That's the purpose of it. In fact, that's why he shows him it. Right? That's the point. I'm showing you the sword. Remember the sword? And what does that lead you to do, Sauron? Despair. I remember this. Why did it happen the first time? Because the Valar were against me. Why is it going to happen now? Same reason. They all seem to ally themselves under the banner of Aragorn, even though he's not their king. He's the king of men. He's not the king of the hobbits. He's not the king of the dwarves or the elves, any of them. But they all willingly follow him. This is an extraordinary thing. It has not happened in a generation, and even then it never happened. Because at that time it was an alliance between elves and men. Now they are coming forth under the banner of a man. One man. There's not an elf alongside. There's no elf king. Just the man. And the elves come to his aid. And the dwarves come to his aid. And the hobbits come to his aid. And so do the ents. And so does the wizard. They all come to the aid of the king. So the king is the banner. And he brings the banner of hope to them. So it's not just the symbolism of Aragorn. It's his commitment to the commonwealth. It's the common good that he represents that brings them to ally themselves, because he represents goodness for all of them. And when he speaks, he promises to do well by all of them, and he delivers upon his promises. So it's not just the symbolism of the king that unites them. It's what the king represents in that symbolism that unites them. They're committed to the good, in other words. And again, it furthers Tolkien's grand design to show the triumph of good over evil when they do this. And so what he demonstrates, and I think this is a salient point, particularly in Tolkien's day and our day, is that religion is not merely a private thing, it's a public thing. And it's necessary that it be publicly enacted and publicly witnessed. And it's the question of rightly ordering the civic realm. Remember in Deuteronomy, in the Shema, it says, greatest commandment. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and your might. These words shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children. Talk of them when you're in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise. Bind them as a sign on your hand. It shall be frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts. I have explicated this passage repeatedly as the commandment to educate, but also as what it includes and the comprehensive nature of the command. First of all, it is marked by love. It's the greatest commandment, Jesus says. In fact, when he's asked which is the greatest, he cites this passage of teaching given to Israel to their children. But secondly, it goes everywhere from the private realm of the home all the way to the domestic sphere of writing on the doorposts of your house and on your gates, in other words, the gates of the city. it should be expressed publicly, not just privately in your home. It's not just for your family, it's for every aspect of your life, including your public life, including the life of the city. So Aragorn represents the public manifestation of virtue, not merely the symbolic portrait of a great virtuous man. He is them all saying we're going to commit ourselves to the public good and defeat evil in every sense. All races will flock to this banner out of the same commitment to the same good, marked by the same love. Very important, I think. That the fact that he's the king and that all the races commit themselves to his leadership is, again, a potent expression of the importance of publicly lived out faith. Whatever you think of that. That's what I think. I think it's what Tolkien thinks. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think so. So when they first meet him as Strider, he doesn't reveal himself fully. He wants to see that they are following him not because of his name, but simply out of trust. And that's, remember, I just mentioned that already. He wants, in a sense, to be loved for and believed in for the sake of the good, but not of the good for them, but the sake of the good, the purpose. Are you going to trust the good? Not what I'm going to give you here, but are you just going to commit yourself to that? And then when they finally find out, they're shocked that Strider isn't just Strider. He's not just a ranger, he's the ranger, and the rangers are the heirs of Elendil. These are the men, the great men of the West. We thought they'd been lost. And this is no ordinary one of those. He is the heir of Elendil. And when the men find it, they're shocked. He's still alive? That was a rumor. And where have you been your whole life? Hey man, where have you been? We've been under assault all these years and you don't even show your face. Seem like a coward. Right? That's what Boromir is effectively saying to him. You don't show up when you're needed. Where have you been cowering your whole life? And he has a different purpose here. And the purpose is not to save Gondor. It's to save Middle-earth. That's what pulls everyone, because he could have gone, saved the men, or seen that as his vocation is to save the White City, bring back the White Tree of Gondor. That he has a bigger calling than that, just like Gandalf does. He also, both of them refer themselves as stewards of sorts. Gandalf says that he's a steward, just like the steward of Gondor. And he's waiting. What is a steward waiting for? The king. Aragorn is the king. The prophet comes along, says, there's the king. You're under his leadership. Where is he in the company of the nine while they're walking along? He's at the back. He's at the back, but he's the guy that is in charge. I'm leading the way, but eventually I'm handing over to him because actually he is taking us into the new age. And his real authority is shown when he unveils himself. So Aragorn threw back his cloak, the elven sheath glittered as he grasped it, and the bright blade of Andúril shone like sudden flame as he swept it out. Elendil, he cried, I am Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and am called Elisar, the Elfstone, Dunedain, the heir of Isildur, Elendil, son of Gondor. Here is the sword that was broken and is forged again. Will you aid me or thwart me? Choose swiftly. Again, it's a call to loyalty. Are you with the good? And if you are, you will be with me. And if you are not, I am your enemy, because I'm here to destroy evil. Right? So he represents a great. He is the banner of hope. And without him, the company would never have got off the ground. So there's something there in the man, the king, which points to Christ in a way that only Frodo does in a very different way. And Aragorn recognizes that. Furthermore, it sees that there's a greater significance to what Frodo does than what even he represents and symbolizes. The good can't come by its own merits. It has to deal with evil first, and he can't do that. He doesn't have it within his power. Anyway, I'll have to finish there for today because I've run out of time. I will get to love next time, and we'll move on to some other things, including the discussion of the film maybe, although I've given away a lot of that already.